So, Brian, this is the first time I've had you on my podcast. You know that, right?
I didn't know that, man. I we've talked so many times. I never know whether I'm on a podcast or not. They should all be podcast recordings, I think.
I'll just do incognito recordings then.
There you go. That'll work. That'll work.
Yeah. Um, so relationships is a topic that's been on my mind this year, especially. They've definitely grown. We're not that far into the year, but that's the word that I'm picking for this year. And I don't know if I had said that at the retreat or not. But it's something that I'm finding more and more value in, personally and professionally. And as you grow and as you develop, on a personal level and in business, your relationships tend to change, right? And they evolve and they develop, and then other ones kind of drop off, or those change. You distance yourself, and I know that, from your growth and just your life, you're somebody, and I'm kind of throwing you not a curveball, but we didn't expect this. We didn't talk about this ahead of time, which is perfect. So, but when I say the word relationships, what does that mean to you as a broad term? How does that
I think
resonate with you?
to simplify it, man, it's the first thing that comes to my mind is valuing people. And if you place a lot of value on people in your life and in and around your life, you figure out a lot about relationships, because I think everybody that's listening or that will watch this, wherever it gets distributed, has probably been through a period of their life when they placed a lot of value on a relationship and that wasn't reciprocated. And then there's people that, you place a lot of value on, man, and the relationship just takes off into outer space, man. It's a really great feeling. And so I think it all starts with valuing people, being yourself first, and putting effort into establishing a relationship. I think that sometimes relationships come out of nowhere, but some of the best ones that I've had over the years have been really intentional, right? I might meet somebody in passing, that might be accidental, but my desire to get to know people, as the journey has evolved, has gotten more and more intentional, right? Because you start to figure out exactly what you're looking for in those people that are around you. You need your own personal board of advisors, if you will. And so what does that look like? When they say, the five closest people to you are who you become, that's a fact, right? And relationships and valuing people and being intentional about who you interact with is really where all of that starts.
I got well, part of the beauty of 7 Day Hustle is I don't really like sometimes
Legit,
things
it's
just
seven
things just
days a week,
happen.
boy. There's no interruptions, right?
It's just, it just, if I try to make sure that everything is perfect all the time, then I will never get anywhere. You know what I mean? And so I've just,
Yep.
I said right off the bat, I want to have a platform to where almost nothing is off the table. You know what I mean? Because I feel like that's something that
Agreed.
everybody can relate to. We
It's a
try to,
reality, man.
it
Yeah.
is, and little things like kids in the background and dogs barking and things coming and going, too many people can get worked up about those little things. And when you halt your production because of those things, you ultimately rob somebody else of value.
Those people that get upset about that stuff probably didn't do too well in 2020.
Yeah, probably not. Probably not. So hold on just a second. What he got into an accident.
Somebody came flying in the turn lane on South Airport.
So what you're saying is we just put $1,000 into a truck that went 20 minutes down the road and got into an accident. Okay, sweet. Okay.
So we're action.
Yeah. Can you, okay.
This episode is brought to you by the 7-day debacle.
The 7-day debacle. Thank you, Brandon. So sweet. All right, we'll deal with that. He didn't say somebody's dead, so we're good. So anyways, where did we leave off? Sorry.
Relationships, valuing people, being intentional about relationships. And as you evolve, being more and more intentional about relationships, because you're really trying to develop that, the surroundings of people that can really get you where you're trying to go.
Mm-hmm. So your perspective on this, because relationships are going to take a certain amount of time, right, out of your day and out of your life. And I'm kind of struggling with knowing where to place what time and what relationships, especially when you don't want to devalue people, And so I'm in this space that I want to make sure that the time is spent with somebody there's a certain amount of value, a transactional value. I either have to be giving value to you or you have to be giving value to me, because if there's nothing going on, then we're both wasting our time, So that can be, when you think about it in that framework, then it almost excludes a certain amount of people from even from your wheelhouse, which can sound like a bad thing. And so I don't want to exclude anybody, but at the same time, you can't put yourself in a position to be drugged down by those people either. It's not my fault that they've chosen complacency in their life. Can you give some feedback on how you would approach that?
Yeah, man. I think that's a really great question, especially for I'm assuming who your audience is, because that evolution of like the path of where you're trying to get to.
Yeah.
I think there's a point where we all struggle with that, right? Like where we all look back and say, like, dude, I want to be the best friend, mentor, everything that I can be to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're kind of on that path and just taking off, you're actually used to being able to answer everyone's phone calls. You're actually used to being able to take everyone's invitation to lunch. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of the process. And it's really hard, man, to like say no to people. Like it doesn't feel good to say no to people.
Mm-hmm.
But it's required, man, in order for us to be able to make it where we're trying to go. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean, by the way, that we don't value people, but in order to be able to get to where you're trying to go to, you hit the nail on the head. Like you just have to be intentional about those relationships. So I wouldn't say that there always has to be an equal exchange, right? Because I think if, in some cases, we're going to be the people grabbing information from people, right? There's always going to be somebody who is our mentor.
Mm-hmm.
There's always going to be people who are our mentees.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also a percentage of your life that you should be giving. And you should be, giving with zero expectation of return in a lot of different places in your life, but specifically to, some of those people that, probably can't do much for you in return, if anything. Right. And that's okay. It just, depending on the dynamic of who you are,
mm-hmm.
you can't do that in the business world and be ultimately successful. Mm-hmm. If you're Mother Teresa, that's all you do is give, no expectation. That's the process. When it comes to this though, I'm a big Maxwell fan. And so, I got the opportunity at my church to listen to John, and I'll share something here that I've never shared before.
Oh,
but I think in the terms of like how we look at giving, or how we spend every day. And so there's two different things here. He talked about giving, and he talked about how to spend every day being more like Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And so the 5 things that he does every day to be more Jesus-like is, number 1, value people. Number 2, think of ways to value people. Because, in order for us to continue valuing people, we have to get creative about it, right?
Yeah.
It's not easy to do that all the time. Number 3 is constantly be looking for ways to add value to people. And dude, I think the problem is that we get caught up in like wanting to be this big, massive impact for people.
Mm-hmm.
When in reality, man, holding the door for someone and asking them how their day is, saying hello, seeing people, being present.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all ways that we can do that. So number 3 was look for ways to add, constantly look for ways to add value to people. Number 4 is, these are all simple, actually do things that value people.
Yeah.
And number 5, I believe the most important, and what we're really doing here, is encourage other people to add value to people.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we are that example for other people, and we take the time to be able to give back, to be able to share what we're learning, to be able to share the lessons, dude, that might not land with anybody that listens to this show, and it might land with 100 people.
Right.
It might change the life of one person. And that ripple effect is all we're looking for, man. And so, when you become a daily seed sower, the harvest of relationships, the harvest of making a difference, the harvest of making an impact, and ultimately having a more full life, it becomes automatic, man, because it's not about, and dude, this crosses over into business in a big way. It's never about the result. I was just talking to somebody the other day about, we're sponsoring an art show, an art exhibit at Stage AE right next to Heinz Field here in Pittsburgh. And Vinny, who works for our team here at the Payment Group, he's an artist, an amazing guy. He was talking about like just how many people are going to attend the art exhibit. And I said, brother, listen, man, never set your focus on the result, right? Fall in love with the process and let the result be what it is, because the education and the lessons and the seeds that get sowed through the process of planning and executing this are far greater than whatever the result may be. Those are vanity metrics, right? Mm-hmm. If 400, 500 people show up, 1,000 people show up, that's phenomenal, man. Mm-hmm. But how we make a difference in the world is what? It's one person at a time, man. It's one conversation at a time. It's one light bulb that goes off at a time. And that seems daunting until you commit your life to valuing people and being of service to others. And when you do that long enough, man, and you look back over 3, 4, 5, 10 years of doing that, the impact is undeniable and it's fulfilling. And so I think not enough people, see that long-term vision of it. They have such a short-term vision of like, how do I make a difference this year?
Right.
As opposed to saying like, man, what could we do if we focus 3 years out or 5 years out? And we do these things every day. We have meaningful conversations. We're intentional about where we spend our time. Mm-hmm. We're intentional about the giving that we do, whether it's in time, money, resources, connections, whatever it is.
Right.
And when you look back at that, man, over a period of years, it's unbelievable what can happen. But you can't seek the significance of the result, right?
No, your value or your treasure in that moment has to be outward towards the other people. Like it can't be inward towards you. What can I benefit from this? And Correct. Ultimately, and basically, those 5 things that Maxwell looks at, none of those are geared towards what can I get, but what can I give?
Yes.
And that's we're inherently built that way, because we're designed by God, and he tells us, it is better to give than to receive. That's just a fact that says these are things that this is more rewarding for you as a human being, and so it's kind of a weird metric to where you have to be unselfish in a selfish way, because your ambition, somebody could call it selfish, but if your ambition is towards others, then it's unselfish. And sometimes I feel like we can ultimately overthink how you serve others and how you build into a relationship, because you kind of alluded to it earlier, like it doesn't have to be this big thing sometimes. And I've found this to be wildly impactful, is just listening. Sometimes people just need an ear. That's it. Like, you don't have to give them an answer. You don't have to solve a problem. You don't have to, cut off your leg and give it to them. They just want to be heard.
And dude, it's unfortunately so rare in the world today. I would argue that listening is one of the greatest ways that you can value people.
Mm-hmm.
Because, we talk about this a lot, man. Like, we just, at the pavement group, we launched one team at the NPE, and people were like, what's this all about?
Mm-hmm.
And the mission is simple, man. It's like, how do we do more to give to those who work alongside of us? Any contractor that's part of our, part of helping us complete projects, they're part of our team, man. They're part of our culture. They are a cultural team member of the pavement group, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we give? How do we set it up? Because, man, the whole world we've somehow gotten in this pattern of like, how do we get? And it's not right. And it's probably why the world is going a little sideways, right?
Yeah.
It always finds a way to correct itself. And I really believe, man, that like our responsibility is to be that example of, being a good listener, giving to people, sowing the seeds, not putting that on display, but just doing it because it's the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And when people get around that and they see giving without expectation, and they try it themselves, to me, man, the only time that I truly feel full and like the most like I want to feel, I guess is the best way to put it, is when I'm literally, man, doing something for others. And at the end of it, like, it just feels great, man. And it's not about, think about this. If you give to someone and they call you, this has probably happened to you, and they say, dude, thank you so much. Like, like you get that person that like, man, they like can't thank you enough. This is me personally, man. And I appreciate them thanking, but it makes me uncomfortable. The best giving that I do, man, is that nobody knows about, that I don't get any calls about, that I just get to dream about how that impact was made. I get to imagine, the lives around the world that are literally, bro, like 30 minutes before I got on this with you, I just sent something out on the internet. There was a donation, and I'll have no idea where that impact is made.
Right.
And that's how I want to work.
Well, I think that,
and dude, don't get me wrong. I love putting my hands on things.
Yeah.
I love being part of things. But like for me, there's something peaceful and fulfilling about that giving and having no idea where it's going, but know that it's making a massive massive difference somewhere.
Yeah.
And again, I just sent this to you in text because I wanted you to be able to read through it. But the second part of what Maxwell talked about, that part that night was 5 questions to ask when being asked to give. And like when I heard this, I was like, man, this is what a way to be able to give to others and to really, build relationships through giving.
Yeah.
Because you feel so good about where it's going, right?
Right.
And so 5 questions to ask when being asked to give. So number 1 is the leadership question. The organization that you're supporting, does the leader have competence and character? Dude, I know lots of organizations where the leader has competence, but not a lot of character, or character, but not a lot of competence.
Right.
And so when we're being asked to give, this is a big one too that he talked about that night. When we're running our business, it's easy to look at, if we're going to spend money on marketing, or we're going to invest in an employee, we're going to do whatever investments we're trying to make, we automatically scan it for an ROI.
Yeah.
But when we're asked to give, it's almost like we feel so guilty that we just want to give, as opposed to actually asking, where is this going to have the biggest impact? How is this going to, if you're a kingdom giver, is this going to have the biggest impact on the kingdom?
Right.
Does the leader have competence and character? Number two, the involvement question. Can I give more than just dollars?
Yeah.
So every time we're asked as a company to give, if it's anywhere near one of our offices, I always say, is there anything that we can help with in addition to giving the money? Because what I want is these people, our team, me, to be able to go put our hands on something, man, and feel involved, like see where the money's going. Because what happens is our team gets more motivated by that. Like, man, we can make a bigger difference. We love this, man. We met the most amazing people here. Let's give more to these people. Right.
Right.
So the involvement question. Number three is the difference question. Is this organization making a difference for others and for me? Number four is the potential question. This is one of my favorites. How can I increase my giving? What do I give? What could I give? And my favorite one, what could I give if I partnered with God to help me give more?
Yeah.
And dude, this one, it gets me all the time, man, because I'm like, how can I integrate this into my faith? How can I partner with God to be able to give more? Like, is this a place where I can invest into that's going to make such a difference in the world because of the character and the competence of the person? The fact that we're all putting our hands on this like we're told we're supposed to do. Right. Is this organization already making a difference? And we can put some juice behind that. And we can partner with God to do it even bigger. And then number five is, what is God's blessing? And has he prompted me to give? What is your spirit telling you to do? Right.
Yeah. That's something that strikes a big chord with me. I had a friend of mine call me up the other day. He said, hey, I need to get your opinion on something. He says, I'm feeling called to give and serve this person in this way. I don't know who they are, or they were a potential client, and he got to know the person. They were dealing with something, but there was an opportunity to give, and God had put it on his heart. Not because he had a big revelation, but because he felt inclined to do so, and I think that if your relationship with God is in tune, then he's going to put that desire on your heart, and it's going to come out in the result of, I feel inclined to move in this direction. Right. And he called me because it was a sizable thing. He says, I don't know what to do with this, because I feel like I want to do it, but it's like, I'm just not completely confident in it. And I said, well, because I've been in that same position before. And so luckily I've gone through that already. God had walked me through that already so that I could respond, to him in this situation. And I said, look, this happened to me not too long ago. From the time that I got the inkling to the time that I executed on it, it was about 4 months, so where it comes into play is, did you execute on it, for one thing? Because if you don't, you're always going to have that nagging feeling inside you that you were either disobedient, you didn't do something that you felt like you're going to have. That's where an empty space comes from, and you don't know how to fill it, but if we're going to look at how the metrics of how this is going to work, you have to understand God's relationship and involvement in your life first. And one thing that helped me is realizing that nothing comes to me that didn't first pass through the hands of God. You know what I mean? It's not like it sidestepped God and hit me and God has no control over it. He allowed me to have it in the first place. And if you look at, call them miracles, call them events, whatever, if you look at things that happened throughout life, in your life, in the history of the world, that shouldn't have happened. That wasn't because of anything we did or didn't do. It's because God wanted it to happen. So if he's putting something on your heart that you need to give or serve somebody in a way, you have to then act out of trust and obedience that he's going to fulfill that and then give you more so you can do that again. You know what I mean? Because if we don't understand what we're actually doing and why and who it's for, we're limiting everything to ourselves. You know what I mean? And it's like, well, I don't necessarily want to give, out of my pocket, even though I feel inclined to, but like, where is that going to get replenished? And so you start negotiating inside your own head of if this is actually something you should do and how willing are you to do it, but and I think there's an art of surrender inside there to where you literally have to just operate. You can't think about it too long.
Right.
Your faith has to be so secure that you end up doing these things and say that, look, God's going to bless me if I'm obedient. If I'm like, and you're just a vessel for the blessing. That's it.
Yes.
And being able to look at it in that framework that, look, nothing happens to me that didn't first pass through the hands of God. And nothing that I can do is going to determine my success. If God wants me to be successful, he will make me successful. It doesn't matter. We can argue, it doesn't matter how many books I read. It doesn't matter how many podcasts I listen to. It doesn't matter how many people I talk to. If I'm obedient and in line with what he wants me to do, he will make me successful, period. And so then
I do argue that God likes to hit a moving target.
okay.
Like I don't find that God blesses those that sit around on the couch eating Cheetos.
No. That's not what I'm getting at. No, I mean, it's not going to come to you. You have to be active in that. You can't sit around and wait for God to bless you. That's not how it works. But sometimes we can get worked up on, are we doing enough? Are we doing, and I struggle with that. How hard can I push in any one specific direction? And am I pushing hard enough? Okay. Sure. Well, is my efforts being placed in the right direction is ultimately what I have to come back to,
Yeah, so. Absolutely, man. And I'm just sitting here thinking about the whole relationship topic, right? And going back to, how do we handle, the evolution of, maybe not having as much time as we would, and how do we invest in those? I think this is all connected, man. Like, I think that, our ability to be the best that we can be, for others, to be most present with others, that starts with our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with God, if that's what somebody listening believes. And it's like, man, you got to be straight yourself first, right? There's a large focus in 2023 on mental health. People talk about it a lot.
Yeah.
And, mental health starts in the soul, man. It really does. It starts way down. And that will dictate the relationships that you have outward, and how good those relationships are, how high your level of awareness is of the relationships that are serving you or you're serving them. So which ones are mutual. It all starts with, self-fulfillment, right? Yeah. Like, if you don't have a high self-worth, if you don't have a high self-awareness, it makes it more difficult to have those relationships. I get the privilege of interacting with a lot of people and watching people interact in their own businesses, interact outside of their businesses, and they share a lot of those stories and challenges that they have with me. And I always try to redirect them to, like, what's going on with you, right? Because when you see conflict consistently across somebody's life, usually it's something internal in us that's restricting us from having those relationships. It's either a matter of self-confidence. NPE is a good example, right? I have a lot of people that come up to me there and they say, like, oh, thank you so much for, taking the time to talk to me, or what. It's like, No, man. Like I always try to redirect the ones that I feel like, there's something under there.
Yeah.
So like, dude, you deserve people's time.
Yeah.
You're deserving.
Yeah.
And anybody that tells you they're always too busy, either is not telling you the truth because there's a reason they don't want to talk to you,
Right.
or they're probably just not a nice person, because everybody has time to talk to somebody for a couple of minutes, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And dude, not forever, right? We're
Yeah.
talking about, like, do you have time for lunch? You can't give all of your time away.
Yeah.
But we can absolutely take the time to be present with people and value them.
Yeah.
And when we do that and we scan the world, sometimes it's the relationships that you least expect it, man, that make the biggest difference. And it's not just, for me, man, like just take TCS as an example.
Yeah.
Everybody that comes into our circle, our group, dude, it's never been about their relationship with me. It's about their relationship with the other people in that community that they can impact. And the greatest joy that I get out of all of that is watching everybody in that group, me included, make bonds with different people, right? And like come together as a family, because listen, man, we're put on this earth in a family structure for a reason. But to get where we're all trying to go, the relationship capital that's required is far beyond just our immediate family.
Yeah.
And so if we can create these relationships that become familial in nature, that are not blood, but they are that way in how we treat each other, man, that's the most powerful thing that I've found in my life. It's because you never feel alone. You never feel like there's something you can't tackle. You never feel like there's something you don't have an answer to, because somebody in the family, somebody in the circle, somebody in the network of all these relationships that you're able to establish, they're going to have the answer. And by the way, I am not here to tell people that they need to be part of an organization like that to be able to do that. I know plenty of people that don't do that at all, that have incredibly rich circles of friends. For me personally, that's been a great solution. I've invested into it. I run a company and an organization that promotes that, and I believe in it heavily. But you don't have to. You can do it either way and be successful. But it starts and ends with valuing people, being intentional, having meaningful conversations, being vulnerable enough yourself to be able to connect with people in ways that other people don't.
Yeah. Well, there's an underlying feeling that everybody wants a connection with somebody else, even if they don't want to admit it, because that would create that would mean that I have to be vulnerable to admit that. Okay. So what can unlock that I've found is you have to be the first person to initiate that sometimes. When you walk into a room, and I learned this, with being involved with TCS, because, until I get to know people, I kind of just like, I'll blurt out some things, but like, for me to truly be vulnerable about what's behind the shade here, I have to get to know people and know that that's a safe space, right? That came out because everybody else was willing to do that first. And then I realized that if I'm going to actually benefit from the people in this room, I have to be that same way back.
Dude, very, very interesting story. When I started the Inner Circle, we interviewed companies, and there were 16 companies that we interviewed. 13 of those we accepted. When I interviewed them, man, and it was a conversation around revenue, just making sure, number one, that what people were joining were going to be a good fit, that there was financially it would be okay for people to be able to actually afford that investment. All of that stuff went into those conversations. What I did not expect is that 16 out of 16 people that applied for the Inner Circle said two things to me. All of them talked to me about their faith. And all of them said, I am searching for a place that I can give to in addition to receiving from. And when I was done with those interviews, man, I said, I don't know, man, if this is some like divine thing, right? Like that, like the chances of all of those people saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, what are the chances of that? But I knew from that day, man, that we had something special because of people's desire to want to do exactly what you just described. And when you get around those people, man, I just said it leaving NPE last week. I said, when you get around people, dude, that are obsessed with like helping each other, it's almost impossible to lose. Like, how do you lose? The only way you lose is if you're not doing anything.
Right.
Right?
Or if you're not investing back into it, really, you know what I mean? Because there's going to be a certain amount of, call it knowledge, information, whatever that you gain from that. If you don't actually do something with that, okay, then you lose. And if you don't invest back into it as well, then you lose. You know, there's
100%, dude. Yeah, because at some point people start to resent you
yes,
if you're the person in the group that's just the taker.
yes.
And dude, this is a big topic for me right now. And I believe that it's on the relationship topic. It's the easiest way to increase in a massive way your relationship capital with anybody. How much do you care, man?
Yeah.
Like, truly, how much do you care? And how do you show that? Because, dude, talk is cheap, man. Everybody talks these days, right? When I look at, you know, let's use the online, you know, you see people online and, you know, everybody's able to create their own celebrity now and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Dude, what's it look like daily? What's the culture of this person's company look like? What are the people around them actually doing, and how are they making an impact? And so it's easy. If you actually pay attention, it's easy to figure out the people who are doing the talking, and it's easy to figure out the people who are genuinely caring and investing in the relationship capital necessary to make a difference in the world.
Yeah.
Because, bro, listen, making money is important. Nothing happens without it.
Right.
Making money and making a difference, like what you actually do with it, that's who I want to be around. I want to be around the innovators that can take $1 and turn it into 100 so that we can make a big difference in the world.
Right.
That's who I'm focused on finding and being around. And when you care and you invest into relationships, you put everything you got into everything you do.
Right.
People are interested in that, man. And so when we do events, right? This week I got several phone calls that said, like, man, I've been thinking about the event that we just had in Hollywood, and like how everything seemed intentional. That was the feedback that I got.
Yep.
And I said, man, like, thank you, because, you know, the first one we didn't, you know, you don't know what the hell you're doing till you do it, right? Like, you know, you put a lot of time into it, but it's not always the same result.
Right.
But our intention, man, is to invest into every relationship that we have that's in that room.
Yeah.
Because the better environment that we can, as an organization, put you guys into, all of us into, dude, the more the relationship capital becomes automatically lifted.
Yes.
Because everything's comfortable. You ain't got to pay attention that your chair sucks, or that's too hot, or it's too cold, or it's too this, or it's why we choose everything that we choose, man. Because at dinner, I want you to be focused on the person across from you, not that your steak sucks.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So like, when you think about this stuff, man, it's so important. Like I just said it yesterday on a post that I put out. It's like, every action matters, man. Every interaction matters. How you're present, do you hold anything back from conversations because there's some benefit to you to do so? I don't do it, dude. I invite our competitors into the room. Why? Dude, because I'm trying to value people, man.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find a way, because if I can bring a competitor in the room that can help your business, dude, I'm selfish if I don't bring them.
Right.
I'm not worried about you. I'm worried about me.
Right.
That's not how it works, bro. And so when it comes to relationships, you got to be willing to give, man. And when you give, you sow the seeds, Dude, the harvest is more than you could ever imagine, dude. And it's more than you could ever need. It's more than you could ever ask for. God will bless you in ways that you can't even fathom, man. I told somebody the other day, we did our first EOS meeting 3 years ago or 3.5 years ago, whatever it was. And I was reviewing the documents, right, of like what we wrote down as our, 5-year vision or 10-year vision or whatever it was.
Right.
And I'm like, shoot, man, we passed that stuff in like a couple of years because this is important, man. Your vision is only as big as what it is in the moment. And guess what increases your vision? Relationships.
Yeah.
My vision changed when I met people that had done more than me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can only see what I've been around. I can only imagine what I've somewhat distantly experienced.
Mm-hmm.
But when I got around people who have done more and gave more and had a bigger impact and were able to juggle more than, I said, dude, if you could do it, I could, right? Why not me? It's what I always say.
Right.
Why not me? Why not you?
Right.
And so when you put value on relationships and you get around the right people and you're intentional about who you meet, be prepared for the harvest, man, because that's who we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be people that value each other, that invest into each other, that pour into each other, that share time, give without expectation.
Mm-hmm.
And when we do that, man, so many seeds get sown that the harvest becomes automatic.
Yeah. That's you. You said so many things. It's like, it just got that I just got fired up on. I mean, it just extreme amounts of value. And entirely correct. I think that in a individual, when you start doing those things, for me, I've come to a point to where I have to question, like, all right, why am I doing this? You know what I mean? Because you can be extremely tactful. Once you know what to do in order to get the results you want, then you know how to act. Okay. So then for me, I've had to question, like, all right, why am I doing this? Because I know where I can bring value. I know where I can, and basically, if I'm somebody that's creating momentum around me, I have to question, am I doing this selfishly or am I doing this unselfishly? Because I know what to do in order to get the results that I want. I know how to sell in order to get, provide an income from my business. And so you question, like, all right, well, why am I doing this? Well, what's your motive?
Bingo.
What is your motive? Is your motive to get it? Are you going to provide value to other people so you can gain something and then keep it inside? Or are you doing that so you can then pay it forward? And it comes down to, you can't provide more impact unless you do those things. You know what I mean? You can't be more valuable. So you have to have an selfish ambition in order to actually be worth something and see what your potential is. You know what I mean? And I've referenced this multiple times in my life, and especially recently, about the parable of and this comes from the Bible. When the vineyard master leaves, he gives 3 people a responsibility. Okay. He gives person number 1 3, we'll call them talents. I think that's where they came from. Basically, 3 items that I'm giving these to you to be responsible for while I'm gone. The second person he gave 2, and the third person he gave 1. Well, he leaves, he comes back. He says, all right, I'm back. What goes on? The first person came back. He says, hey, I invested these and I brought you back 3 times as much. The second person says, I invested this and I brought back twice as much. Here you go. The third person says, well, here, I gave you back exactly what you gave me because I didn't want to lose it. You know what I mean? Like, okay, obviously he didn't get the point in the moment, and we're realizing this through the parable. That's why it's impactful. But what I realize is, like, I have an opportunity to do something. I have potential to do something. God gave me a purpose. I definitely don't want to be person number 3. I don't even want to be person number 2. I want to be person number one. That means that a lot of action has to be taken. That means a lot of intentional moves have to be made. And that means I have to be smart about what I'm doing, and so it comes down to your motive. But
Yeah, and dude, listen, I've had this conversation with you a bunch. Like, you also have to reward yourself.
yeah,
If you don't, you likely will run out of motivation to continue. There
and
has to be some, whether that's listen, man, a day that you invest in yourself to go recharge so you can do
yeah,
more.
yeah,
It's different for every person, right? Like, what fills your cup is different. For some people, it's exotic cars. That's not it for me. But there's other things that I enjoy. I enjoy traveling with my family, spending time with my family,
yeah,
going on a trip with my wife, like whatever that is. But like, you hit the nail on the head, dude. It's the motive.
yeah,
And when you see people in the world that you don't think have a good motive, believe your gut,
yeah,
because you're probably right.
yeah,
And, by the way, it doesn't make them an evil person. It doesn't make them it means they could be unaware, right? They've gotten caught up in something that the enemy has placed in front of them that they think is a temporary feeling of fulfillment that they want.
yeah,
And dude, those are all over the place. Idols, money, alcohol, the opposite sex, whatever it is.
yeah,
There's a million of them.
yeah. I think
Nothing, dude, will fulfill you like relationship with the man upstairs,
yeah,
relationships with other people, and giving as much as you possibly can.
I definitely agree with you that you have to reward yourself also. And this came up to me, because I don't want people to say, well, it must be nice. I don't like hearing those things from other people. And you kind of got to just brush it off. But it hit me when Daniel Wright, he texted me one day. He says, what do you do for fun? And I says, why are you asking? Because you want to know, or because it seems like all I do is work? And it was more so the second thing. And I realized that, look, if I don't actually show that there's a benefit to my efforts, then it's not going to be attractive to anybody. Like, yes, you have to show what the work you have to portray, and you can't hide the work that is required to be put in, but you also have to know and prove to other people that, like, look, this works. Like, I can enjoy other elements of my life, because if all that I show is struggle and effort and all of those things, nobody's going to want to follow that path. You know what I mean? Whether it's
let me challenge that for a minute though, brother. Because
okay.
That was me. 2018, we started this company. I would argue, man, that 2018 and 2019, anybody that was watching me, there wasn't a whole lot of fun going on at all.
Yeah.
But that work ethic and that focus, but most importantly, the vision of like, this is where we're going. And I just had one of my buddies the other day. He said, because he used to say to me, like, hey, man, same kind of thing. Like, hey, man, you taking time to hang with your family? And, people don't see that. They just see a lot of work, and so they think there's nothing else going on.
Right.
And, perception's not always reality. You don't have to share everything that you do in your life.
Right.
But like, the work ethic, brother, is what attracted people here, because they felt they were coming to something stable. And so for you, if I'm looking from the outside in, and I'm a grinder, right? And I'm going to get behind a dude like you, because I say to myself, like, this dude's going to go to war for me, right? And this person is going to create an environment. Now, the key for you is to have the vision of what is going to happen in the future.
Right.
Dude,
right.
I have all my goals on my phone, and some of them are too personal to share. I'd put it on the screen here, but the two on the bottom that I'll share with you is go to church in person every week, right? Because I don't always, sometimes I'm like, catch it next time. That's not okay. And I watch on YouTube, but like, is it the same? No, it's not.
Yeah.
But the one on the bottom is to take 8 trips with my family this year in
Mm-hmm.
2023. And that wasn't possible in 2018 or 19. But the work that I did
Yes.
in 2018, 2019, 2020 has now enabled me to build a team
Right.
that affords me the opportunity to do that. And so it's the vision that creates the future
Yeah.
of making sure that the sacrifice is worth it.
Yeah.
Because, too many people, man, sacrifice for that period of time. They either don't sacrifice enough to get the reward, or they don't sacrifice long enough. And they give up before they get the gold.
Well, I think that could come back to the selfish versus unselfish.
Yep.
Yep. Are you waiting to be repaid, or are you just acting out of unselfishness because, it's not about you?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
100%, man. 100%. So,
Brian,
it's all connected too, man. That stuff of like, do you feel good about the sacrifice? I've had people say to me like, hey, when's enough? I'm like,
well, okay.
that's the same thing as it must be nice. When's enough? I don't know, man. I'll let you know when I figure it out. Like,
why does there have to be enough? You know what I mean?
That's my point. Like, dude, I'm not.
It doesn't
like,
have to be. Don't put.
And
your
don't make the
reservations on
assumption
me.
that it's all for me.
Yeah.
Right. You don't know what I give. You don't know what I do. You don't know. But that's the world we live in, is like this outside in lens.
Mm-hmm.
And dude, listen, man, Daniel Wright's calling you out of concern, right? That's somebody that cares for you.
Yep.
But there are people that question that they don't know what's going on, man. And
right.
I always just throw it back on them, like,
yep.
Well, what do you think? Right?
Yeah.
What do you think? You think I work too much? What gives you that idea? Just start asking them questions, man. What gives you that idea? I mean, where does that come from? You think it's like because of what you see on Instagram?
Yeah.
You ever think that maybe that's a marketing message that, I want people to think I work a lot, but really I'm sitting on the couch? It could be anything.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I know people that make themselves look super wealthy online that don't have anything.
It's easy to do.
So like, don't believe what you see. Go verify it in person, get to know people, build relationships.
Yeah.
And then you'll have a much clearer understanding of the world, right? But it all happens through people.
Yeah. You mentioned something kind of in passing that struck a chord with me, and we'll wrap this up here shortly. But my response to what you just said, and it might trigger where I'm coming with this. I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole, but I'm just going to say that somewhere in this, you can compare to giving with a cheerful heart.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like where is enough? Okay. At the point to where you're not able to give with a cheerful heart anymore. And that was something that I had mentioned to my friend that had called me, that I referenced earlier. He's like, well, how much do I go? I said, you go to the point to where you're not going to feel like you didn't give enough, and you're happy about what you're doing.
And that you're checking the boxes, man, and what makes you full. Like, what were you called to do?
Right.
What were you called to do?
Right. Because if you're going to bed at night, right.
Listen, bro, this happened to me last year. It was like, God put this on my heart, like, dude, give this amount of money. And I was like, ooh.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing, dude. I was like, dude, I don't even want to tell anybody about this, because that, like, and then I was like, okay, well, where am I supposed to give it to?
Yeah.
And how am I supposed to do it? And so I worked through it, but I was obedient, man. I took the time to make sure it was, it felt right to me, that I felt like it was going to the right place. But dude, I feel great about that, man. And so, those people out there, because dude, one of the things that we're trying to do in TCS, that we haven't really said, but we talked a year ago about teaching people how to give.
Yeah.
And so our donation as a group to Maxwell's organization, Equip.
Yeah.
That's a demonstration of that, right? It's like, let's show people that this is the right thing to do. And if
Right.
we don't do it, then how are we going to expect other people to learn how to do it? Because nobody teaches anybody how to give, man.
Right.
They don't even teach kids how to balance a checkbook anymore or how to manage money. So like definitely nobody's going to teach people how to give.
No.
And what a shame, right?
No.
So like we got to do it, man.
Right. Right.
We got to do it with a cheerful heart.
Well, yeah, because if you gave a penny less than what you felt called to do, you wouldn't go to bed at night feeling like you did the right thing. Because you have to go all the way or not at all, because that little bit will eat you alive. If you go more than that, then you feeling like it's an obligation. And so there is a very fine line with just do what you're told.
Do what's right, dude. Do what's right. Yeah, do what's right.
Yeah.
Dude, last week at NPE, I went to Starbucks, right? I go up there and I buy stuff for everybody and and I get a drink.
Mm-hmm.
And the girl tells me the total. And I said, man, that seems cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Said, did you get all this stuff? She said, oh, I forgot your drink. She goes, thank you for telling me. And I said, honey, I'm blessed. I'm trying to stay that way. He's always watching.
Mm-hmm.
Do what's right. Whatever God puts on your heart, man, do it and watch what he does.
Mm-hmm. There's a pastor of mine. He's not around anymore, but he gave me the best representation of tithing that I've ever heard. He said, I would rather have 90% blessed by God than 100% unblessed.
Amen, dude.
Okay.
Amen. But people
said.
don't see it, bro, because they think it's a crazy idea.
Yep. Enough said. So, Brian, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Anytime, brother.
Well,
Anytime.
we're going to have to do it again because I didn't get into how to deal with bad relationships, which is something that, it is a whole nother topic for another episode, but you're somebody that I greatly respect and look up to, and it's encouraging to see what you do, because you stay you're somebody that I follow, and so
thank you, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, dude, I've not always been the greatest at dealing with bad relationships, because I think we do what we see. We do what's around us.
Yep.
But there's a lot to unpack there, because dude, you're not going to get along with everybody. No. Not everybody's going to love you, but how you treat those people in return will either multiply your life and multiply those people around you.
Yeah.
And be a good example, or you can fall in the pile with everybody else, who, talks negatively and all that stuff. I just, I try to keep my energy. I mentioned it at the retreat, right? My wife was trying to make me watch some, crazy negative video when we were in the middle of the retreat. I just said, babe, listen, I love you, but I ain't watching that video, man, because I got to go pour into people. And that video is not going to serve me right now. It's not going to serve these people. And so I'm going to protect my energy. And it's the same in bad relationships, right? Like you got to, protect yourself to some degree and protect them, man. Like if you don't, wave air on a fire, man, eventually it burns its way out, and that to some degree, sometimes we got to starve those scenarios of oxygen. Happy to do it anytime, brother. Thanks for having me. Always enjoy our conversations. At least this one was recorded.
It was. All right, Brian. We'll see you on the next one.
You got it.